Oops.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We'll start the program in a few minutes, so hang tight. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Anne-Marie Baldonado, and welcome to this week's Conversations with Common Sense live stream, where we tap into some of our favorite experts to offer real-time advice for navigating the dilemmas you may be experiencing at home right now. As you probably know, for over 16 years, Common Sense has been helping families navigate the increasingly complex digital world. I'm the host of the new Common Sense podcast, Parent Trapped. On our show, we tackle a lot of the same issues that are covered in this series, Conversations with Common Sense. On our podcast, we also discuss what we're dealing with during the pandemic, with most of us still at home. We talk about screen time, teaching our kids at home when you're not a teacher, and anxiety, our own and our kids. I talk to authors, children's book writers, comedians, and many of the wonderful editors at Common Sense. Last week, I talked to iconic actor and singer Julie Andrews about how to encourage a love of reading in your kids. And on this week's episode, which just came out today, we discuss how to talk to your kids about racism with Allison Briscoe Smith, who was, of course, a participant in last week's Conversations with Common Sense. We also encourage listeners to submit questions and any parenting hacks that you've developed over these months. So we hope you check out the podcast. You can find Parent Trapped on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, for parents and educators still looking for engaging, entertaining, and learning activities for preschoolers up through 12th graders, Common Sense launched a free platform called wideopenschools.org, along with some of the biggest names in media, tech, and education: Sesame Street, Nat Geo, PBS Kids, Khan Academy, Google, Apple, and many more. The site is a one-stop shop for the curated resources we all need right now, so please check it out. I'm very excited to introduce you to Caroline Knorr, Senior Parenting Editor for Common Sense Media and the mom of one, and Christine Elgersma, the Senior Editor of Parenting Education, a former teacher, and a mom of a 6th grader. They'll talk for about 30 minutes, and then we'll take questions via the comments chat. We'll do our best to answer them. Okay, so Caroline and Chrissy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. And I just want to say that the Parent Trap podcast is excellent. So if you haven't listened to it yet, I hope that you do. And so first, I just want to start by applauding parents for getting through the past few months. It has not been easy. And, some of us still have a few weeks of school left to go, and we need to get our kids over that finish line. And we also want to talk about what comes next, the wide expanse of summer and, the summer slide that a lot of us are concerned about. So let's start by talking about how we're going to get through the next few weeks if your kid is still in school. So Caroline, what can we do to help keep our kids motivated?
Yeah. Chrissy, I talked to a lot of our staff educators, former principal, former teacher, and I collected some tips for parents who have been sort of doing what we're calling this triage education about how to stay motivated yourself and keep your kid motivated for those last little bits of the school year. First thing I want to recommend is just check in with your kids. We're just in a really unusual time. Kids are uncertain about what's going to be happening. Parents are uncertain. And one thing that parents may not realize is that as we get to this unusual time of the year and this final push, kids may not be motivated by the same things that they were over the school year. So you may have a type A kid who's like, oh, I'm done. You may have a kid who's usually like a procrastinator who just wants to zip through their work. So get a sense of how your kids are feeling and how they want to tackle the last little push there. And then my next tip is I really, really encourage parents to lead by example. I know that we are just all kind of done and frustrated with the last few months and feeling like, let's just get this done. But what you really want to try and instill in your kids is this is about lifelong learning. You got to finish those tests. You gotta check in with those Zoom meetings and all of that kind of stuff that kids are having to do, finish those packets, all that kind of stuff. But really, you want to keep your attitude positive. I know that it's frustrating, but just keep your attitude positive. And, if you sense that your kid is flagging, one thing we found at Common Sense Media that can be really helpful is to find media role models that can demonstrate that kind of persistence, the grit, the resilience that you want your kids to emulate. I cannot stress enough how impactful that can be for kids, especially in the tween years, to look at role models. So you can find examples of great positive role models and positive messages about some of those character strengths on our website. Just type in character at commonsense.org. And then 2 more ideas. You want to work on helping your kid build their work ethic. So we're trying to build lifelong learning skills. Yes, we're trying to get over the finish line, but we want to kind of talk about how this is a time when kids can really dig deep into their inner resources and find out what they have left. Learning is a lifelong goal. So when you're discussing the end of the school year, focus on the skills kids are building, that inner strength, the value of seeing things through, and the feeling of accomplishment. Most kids can push themselves when it's something that they really love. I've seen my kid, build these giant Lego creations, but sometimes he doesn't have that strength for working through those final chapters or whatever. But you can talk to your kids about, where did you find that motivation before in something that you were successful at, and let's apply that now. And then I think that it's really important for parents to praise effort. You probably hear that a lot. There's you don't want to necessarily say, good boy, good girl.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
But you want to say, you did well. I noticed that you asked a good question. I noticed that you worked a little bit harder today than you did yesterday. So praise that effort with your kids. That really goes a long way. If you notice those little things, it really goes a long way towards helping them feel good about themselves and feel good about their ability to just get through that final push.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense, for sure. And I think, is there any shame in offering a few incentives at this time?
Well, Chrissy, yeah,
I don't want to say bribes, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, Chrissy and I, we talked about that, and I think bribes are sort of like that dirty little secret that parents use. We try and focus on, let's make it something that the kid feels that they earned, rather than just a little prize. So one of the things that maybe you could do is, okay, if we finish this packet without any complaints, and we're not in the habit of saying screen time is your reward, but give them 15 more minutes on the tablet, or if you can kind of connect that special something to look forward to the work that they've done, that will really help a lot. Because once you start getting into that bribing thing, kids they take advantage. So try and connect it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that should help us kind of push through the tail end of the school year. But I also recently read that New York Times article about the summer slide, and how the gap actually this year is going to be even wider than it normally is, because the summer slide is something that we talk about every year. And also, it's going to widen the homework gap in terms of, socioeconomic and racial gaps. And so catching up is not going to be easy. And I think, trying to speak for parents who have been struggling through this, we have to surrender to that a little bit, which is difficult. And I think we have to recognize, even though we're not all in the exact same boat, because we've been in different situations, and because of inequities, we're still all facing gaps. So I think we have to let ourselves off the hook a little bit for that. And we have to remember that our relationships with our kids is really the most important thing. So even though we might be anxious about those gaps, we don't want to kind of push that on our kids, and give them that anxiety, impart that anxiety to them. And also just to kind of frame the summer slide, which, we worry about every year. Let's just kind of boil it down, because it sounds kind of big and scary. And really, when we talk about the summer slide, we're talking about reading and math for the most part. So math skills that kind of lag behind and kids forget how to approach some problems, and then reading. And the good news is those are skills that we can incorporate in so many ways during the summer. So I'm wondering what you would advise parents to do, just in terms of keeping some of the spirit of learning in general alive over the summer.
Yeah, I think you're right. One thing I've noticed, there's definitely been a lot of these articles about the summer slide. There always are. I think, teachers talk about that, the summer slide. But there's also, there's a little bit of fear mongering, I would say, about the summer slide, because, I think kids really do, they really are able to catch up in those, 2 weeks when they do review time, when school starts up again. And what you really want to do, it's not so important that you drill on fractions and multiplication. What you want to be able to do is help your kid enjoy learning, prepare their minds for learning. So you want to basically create like sort of a fertile, environment where they're open to learning and they get exposed to lots of different things. And, that doesn't mean you have to go to the museums. You don't have to be, always running, enrichment activities. You can really do that yourself by asking questions with your kid, because that helps strengthen their communication skills. It exposes them to new vocabulary words. When you talk to your kids, I know that a lot of parents are using some very ripe vocabulary words around this time of year, but
maybe not that vocabulary. Yeah.
But reading really helps. If you're kind of at the end of the rope there with reading, doing too much of that, feeling a little bit exhausted by picking up another Harry Potter, whatever, you can always alternate doing pages with your kid. You can also get books on tape. Actually, Chrissy, I just found out that Amazon Audible is offering a huge list of books for kids, tweens, and young teens for free right now. So you can, and this is not a plug, I just found out about this, that a lot of companies are offering resources for families for free. And we're gonna talk about some of those more later. But I think Amazon's Audible is great, because I have read that educators say if kids keep up their reading over the summer, that helps them in all subject areas. Reading just it's just a really good activity. But if you can't always get those books, I don't see a problem with doing books on tape. Have them, listen to them. You can stream them right through your Audible, and they're free. So there's some classic books available. I just think it's a great option, as well as podcasts, but we'll talk about that more later. I think that, again, you just want to be able to make sure that you're engaging with your kid meaningfully. You don't have to be teaching them fractions. A lot of parents feel the pressure of, I need to be teaching my kids something all the time. You are teaching them by interacting with them and communicating with them, asking how they're feeling, what they think about things. If they hear a story on the news, you can discuss it and elicit more critical thinking skills from your kid. You can say, what do you think about that, and why? What can support your opinion? Those are some ideas that just, again, help kids think a little bit deeply, especially when they're engaged in a lot of superficial activities like video games, whatever. Not that they're all superficial, but talking to your kid and interacting in meaningful ways can really just help them grow. And try not to communicate your anxiety about it, because not to say that you shouldn't, express your frustration or where your authentic feelings, but I would say really back off on the, you got to learn this stuff, the drill and kill stuff. I think that we all need to take a pause, mental health break, and kids can really, really sense that anxiety that parents can bring when they're worried about something. And a lot of times kids, they internalize that. They think, I did something wrong. So for parents, I recommend you can say frustrated, angry, worried, and then make sure that you connect that to something external. So you're, I'm worried about the news or whatever. Don't make your kid feel at fault. Because that just, that really shuts down the learning. And then I think, again, it's just not so much that the actual academic, fractions and multiplication, all of that kind of stuff, more than, what you want to do is prepare their minds for learning and help with their curiosity and critical thinking skills.
Yeah. And I think, that all makes a lot of sense. And I also, I think looking for the learning opportunities can even sometimes get at those academic skills, which is really cool. So for instance, if you bake, there are fractions right there available. And if you're talking about them and having your kid help you, that's a great way to introduce those concepts in a real hands-on real world way. And I think there are a lot of examples like that where as you just are going about your daily business, if you're finding those learning opportunities and taking advantage of them with your kid, it can be really great, and you can get at a lot of those skills.
I recommend making a recipe and doubling it, and then have your kid do all. Well, I can't even tell you how many times my son has put in like a tablespoon of vanilla when he made when he made something. Yeah, so that's a really good one. My family has been. Oh, Chrissy, I wanted to ask you about. Talked about those opportunities for learning and how summer is, again, a time slower paced. Kids can really do self-directed learning, and there's opportunities for kids to get ideas for their self-directed learning online. But you had mentioned that your daughter is doing a little summer project.
Yeah. So I think, we were talking about how it's a great time to do sort of passion projects that have some learning embedded. Yeah. So whatever your kid is really passionate about and loves, even if it's something that you might think is not learning related, but they like to spend hours on, for like Minecraft, for instance. I think there are a lot of cool challenges and parameters that you can put around their use of Minecraft to make it more educational. So can you build this historical building? Can you create a city that mimics this actual historical city? But in terms of my kid, my partner is very into ancestry.com. And so there's a lot of genealogy. And my daughter is kind of interested in that. And so I think one thing that she might be doing is kind of using Google Maps and looking at all the different places where different parts of our family comes from, and then learning a little bit about each place. And that's not something every kid's going to be interested in, but it's something that she has some interest in. And so it can be sort of this open-ended project that she can work
You can talk about immigration. You can talk about, the economy, the sort of like the demographic mix of the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, again, it's just the opportunity. Your kid is into Zelda Breath of the Wild, a video game. There are so many things within games, even video games, problem solving. And, they're just, if you just have to look for those windows.
Yeah. Well, speaking of windows, I don't know about your neighborhood, but our neighborhood has been putting up rainbows and teddy bears in the windows, right? And I'm seeing a lot of families walk around. So you could say like, how you can count the teddy bears, and how many houses did we see today? Just little math things like that. What if we see 10 more? How many is that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I love the little treasure hunts. That's great. My son is doing guitar, and we had talked about, he's, taken, formal lessons and everything, but he just told me the other day, he was like, really everything I want to learn is on YouTube. So he, a lot of parents worry about their kids' YouTube time, and that is legitimate because YouTube, has some problems. But a lot of times what looks to us like, maybe not productive or has some, landmines, like with YouTube, with ads and related videos and all that kind of stuff. But again, if kids are doing a passion project, as you mentioned, they're going to look for the stuff that they love to do. They're not necessarily going to get distracted by that bad stuff. So like, for example, with my son doing those guitar videos, that's all he wants to do. And so he has really immersed himself in that. And, I just try not to worry about the other stuff that he's not doing, because I know that his mind is growing, and there are things that he's learning about the world from learning the music that he's picking up and the guitar playing. So I just, just try and be supportive of that. And then, Chrissy, you and I talk a lot about how when kids are interested in something, how can you like expand that interest to some, expand and amplify. So sort of like related activities, and with the guitar stuff, we could do related activities. Well, let's listen to, that. Let's download, let's listen to Spotify and let's download some more of these songs and let's explore, my son really loves like country music and roots music and stuff. So we can really explore kind of the origins of that kind of like American style music. And that that helps learning the history. So that's one way that you can kind of take what they're interested in and then just find that little thread and keep following it.
Yeah, that's a really great example too, because if you can find, some piece of reading about here's the origin of the guitar, and then how do the strings vibrate in a certain way? How do you make certain notes? Like there are all these branches of academic learning that come from this thing that your kid loves. So
yeah, we also do a lot of 20 questions. That's always been our default game when we are out to dinner. Well, we can't go out to dinner anymore, but waiting for dinner, and my actually like it gets to a point where I'm like, like not 20 questions again. So, those little, sometimes I call them like parlor games or whatever. It doesn't require any, you don't need cards. You don't need a board for board games. You can just play it in your mind. So 20 questions is a good one. If you need
animal,
any help.
vegetable, mineral.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's one that we played, and just trying to classify things. How do you classify something as an animal, vegetable, mineral? And I mean, there's a lot of learning that can come with just that.
Yeah. So stuff the sort of like the let's see, 20 questions we did. Oh, I Spy is a good one, and then another one we had talked about was would you rather?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, would you rather be able to fly or be invisible? That could get kids going for a long time.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of the concrete digital tools too, because I spend a lot of my time looking at these digital tools. And so I know that screen time is something that is on everybody's mind because kids are getting so much of it right now. But I do just want to let parents know that if you find the good stuff, there are lots of opportunities for kids to take with lots of different kinds of digital tools. So I just want to name a few, but I want to let you know that on Common Sense, we have lists. So if you want to look for math apps or reading apps, we have a list for kids who think reading is boring. We have a list for kids who hate math. We have 20 weird apps to get your kids learning. So there are a lot of angles we try to come at this.
And Chrissy, you talk a lot about how when parents are looking for apps or another online, digital learning tools, it would be great to find things that that the digital environment brings to the learning that kids couldn't get in other ways. So that's one differentiating thing that makes digital tools a valuable thing when kids can't get that in-person learning. Can you briefly talk about that a little bit and explain that to parents?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. So I think when apps started, they were sort of like digital worksheets.
Right.
And that can really turn a kid off, especially now because things have advanced so much. So if we can stay away from the apps that just sort of replicate, you're just doing your times tables, there are better tools that can get at those skills in different ways that don't feel like I'm just doing this worksheet on a screen. Let me just name a few.
Yeah.
And again, you can find lots more on the site. But for instance, Bedtime Math is a great website that integrates math questions, sort of real world math questions, into every day. So you can find one and they have it at the same sort of question, but at different levels for the whole family, and just pose it to the whole family and then talk about it. So it's a great way.
Put me on the spot there, Chrissy.
I'm just going to make one up, but let's just say, there's a particular number of penguins that scientists need to find out how many there are, but they know this many migrate. And so how do we figure out what the number of penguins is that is coming to a certain place at this time? And so as a family, you can kind of talk about, how would they figure this out? So that's bedtime math. For little kids, Khan Academy Kids is a free app that gets at lots of language and math skills. So that's great. Dragonbox is a developer that has lots of great apps. Comes at algebraic thinking in a really unique way. It's really cool. And they have some other apps for little kids too. Slice Fractions is really fun. And it's a great way to teach how to approach fractions. Montessori math.
Pizza.
Yeah, there's no pizza, but there is a cute mammoth in that app, which is a bonus. Read, Ask, Chat is a good reading one for little kids. I'll just name a couple more. Homer, really great for reading for little kids. Epic has a huge library of digital books, and they're offering a lot of those for free also right now. And then I'll just name one interesting reading one called Weirdwood Manor. So if your kid is kind of a reluctant reader, it's a story broken into chapters, and it's kind of spooky and creepy, but it'll get them reading in this interactive environment.
Oh, okay. So is that like a choose your own adventure type of thing?
That one is not so much a choose your own adventure, but it does keep a kid involved in reading in this interactive way.
Okay. Let's go. You had talked about a couple of other ones that they're not academic. The ones you mentioned are sort of really focused on that math and reading stuff, but some that offer other learning opportunities. And can you describe what other learning opportunities parents should be looking for and where they can find them?
Yes. So aside from reading and math, if you're looking for, problem solving, that's a great way to come at it. Spatial reasoning. Minecraft is really great for that when you're building things. Creativity, of course. Any app that gets a creativity is great. And critical thinking. So just a few, again, I'll name just a couple. Robot Factory by TinyBop. TinyBop is a great developer. They have a ton of great science apps, but they also have apps that encourage problem solving and critical thinking. Busy Water is one where kids have to sort of figure out puzzles. Zoombinis is a great sort of story-based adventure game that has a lot of puzzles. So again, there are lots of different ways to come at these things that keep your kids thinking and learning.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit because we're getting to about 10:30 and we wanted to do some questions. I think we want to start questions at about 10:35 or something like that. But I want to talk a little bit about, there's a lot of summer stretching out in front of parents, and they've already been trying to do homeschooling and trying to make sure that their kids are just not just playing Fortnite all summer or watching, binge watching Stranger Things all summer or whatever. So there's this idea of online virtual camps. And I talk a lot about that seemed like a few years ago, online virtual camp seemed crazy, like the last resort.
Like an oxymoron.
Yeah, but now it's looking pretty good. So parents can find our list of summer camps virtual summer camps on our website. And I want to talk a little bit about the format. So some of the summer camps, a lot of them, by the way, are free. The formats really vary. So I think you can put together a pretty good variety of activities for your kids this summer through online opportunities, this virtual learning stuff. One of the great resources there is OutSchool. OutSchool offers a lot of different types of things, Minecraft camps, and also you could just go to have a camp for a day or something like that.
Yep.
Some virtual camps are basically you go and you download a curriculum And your kid just does that on their own, self-paced, self-directed learning. You can check in with them if you want to. And then some of the camps have a combination of online meetings on Zoom, plus self-directed learning that kids do on their own. So there's a really good variety of things that you won't be, if you think online summer camp, like you thinking your kid's going to be on the computer all day long. No, there's a lot of different options that you can put in. Again, a lot of them are free. And there are some camps there's Camp Kinda that we talked about. I'll let you, I know you know a little bit about that one. And then we also have our own camp, but I'll let you talk about that one too. But I want to say too, there's this Camp Edmo that is really trying to replicate some of the social emotional learning that kids get from going to real summer camp in an online environment. So that's a great one to look for. It's about strengthening relationships, making friends. I think they even sort of kind of virtually substitute in campfires and s'mores and all that kind of stuff into a virtual environment. And I think that parents will really be, now that kids have been doing like online learning, I think that they are kind of prepped for that. And so I think that there's a lot of stuff that can happen that will continue to really build, the soft skills that we want our kids to learn over the summer. So I'm going to let you talk about some of our recommendations there, and then we're going to stop and do some questions.
Yes. So very briefly, I'll just say, there are some themed camps, and Camp Kinda is one of those, and they try to make their themes really intriguing and interesting. And that is one, it's free. So you just sign up, you register, and then you get the materials sent to you via email.
Camp Kinda is free?
It's free.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's great. And that is one that's more self-directed and less screen-based, where you're interacting with somebody. And OutSchool, I've signed my kid up for some of the one-off kind of classes. So you can kind of cobble these things together into something that makes sense for your family. And then Wide Open School, which you may or may not be familiar with, but it's existed for a little while now, and we've moved into sort of a summer mode. And so we're curating content thematically. So there are all these themes that work for pre-K through 5th grade. And then we also have materials for 6 through 12. So that is another free resource where you can find activities that you think your kid is really going to love. Yeah. So hopefully those will be some good options to get us through the summer.
Yeah.
And I think this would be a good time to take some questions. So our first question comes from Jorby Williams. How can you balance outdoor time with all of this indoor learning time? Are there any games or activities outside that promote learning too? Yes.
I love that question.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, there are.
Yes.
We have some, in fact, I think on the website, I think the list is called like apps that inspire outdoor learning, something like that.
Yes. Yep.
And there's an astronomy app that you can get, so kids can look at the night sky. There is, honestly, you could play, isn't there like an educational version of Pokemon?
Pokemon Go, which gets you outside.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, it seems antithetical to say, here are some apps that help you play outside.
Right.
But if that serves as a good bridge, there are apps that do encourage some learning outside.
Yeah.
But of course, then there are all the, old school things. You can go on a scavenger hunt. You can set up a treasure hunt for your kid with clues. And
one thing that I've gotten into, Chrissy, is I bought a bird feeder. So I've been attracting all these birds to my backyard. That is a great stay-at-home staycation activity I would recommend if you're really, really get
Yeah.
desperate. But there's a lot of apps. There's I think it's Audubon that helps families identify different birds that they might find in their backyard. And there's a lot of like nature identification apps too. So you Yes. What are they called? What was that?
Plant Snap is one of them.
Plant Snap, yeah.
Yeah, to identify plants.
Yeah, those are really great too.
But even, I mean, really simple things like painting rocks and, those sort of creative, or identifying rocks, or, planting seeds, things that help get kids outside and moving around.
Yeah, and by the way, if one of the recommendations I got for helping your kids stay motivated through the school year is do your homework outside. Just move the location. And that can maybe kind of help too. So you can just take your kids outside, and I don't know. I've seen a lot of hopscotch out in my yard, or my neighborhood.
You can do math while doing hopscotch.
What's that?
You can do addition, subtraction while doing hopscotch.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to take the next question, Karen?
All right. So this is from Jordan Willix. I'm curious about tips for young kids heading into kindergarten who missed the crucial months of social development in preschool. What can I do to help get them ready for the first day? That's a great question. And also because kindergarten now is very academic. Kids are starting to even get homework in kindergarten. There is less emphasis on, like, when, a lot of parents were in kindergarten, like the whole emphasis was on like sharing and being a good friend. Now they're really starting to learn like, basic math concepts and even some reading, I think, in kindergarten. So I think actually, if you are still sheltering in place and you're pretty much confined to the home, I think that some of the things you can do is you can do a lot of Zoom play dates. I recommend that. Young kids can, make a good social connection with other people on the screen. So you could try that. Maybe with kids who are going to the same kindergarten, you could have a little play date like that. Chrissy, what do you think?
We have a book list about getting your kid ready for kindergarten. And
again, that's really more about getting them interested in learning, prepared for learning. I know this question was focused on social. But if you're concerned about your kid being prepared, I also would say kids do so much learning and growing over the summer. It's sort of remarkable. You start out with a 5-year-old, and then, you get a 5.5 or 6-year-old. There are a lot of developmental changes there too, right, Chrissy?
Yes, that is very true. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Can you talk about teens? Do you have ideas for keeping them learning and engaged over the summer? Yes, I think, a lot of the things that we have talked about already apply to teens, but I would emphasize the sort of passion project idea with teens. So I think more self-directed is better for teens. The more choice they have, the more engaged they're going to be. So I definitely think that letting them take the reins a little bit and then kind of steering that ship will.
Yeah, and I think that can definitely be scary for parents, that transition from having more control over what your kids are exposed to letting kids make their own choices about their media. You want to be able to keep a tighter rein on things, but we're in an environment where kids get exposed to a lot of stuff, and I know a lot of parents are relaxing their rules and letting kids expand a little bit more their media exposure to stuff that maybe kids are doing Reddit. Teens get into Reddit. Maybe they're doing TikTok stuff. Maybe they're more into YouTube. And I would say for parents who are concerned about teens doing more of their own exploration in media and technology, I would say for parents, definitely look up the stuff that your kids are doing. Look that up on our website. because we offer talking points on every single piece of media we review. So if you don't know what your kid is doing, you can at least get some ideas. And if you can engage with your kid about their media without being judgmental, without shutting it down and being worried, and still trying to be open-minded about what your teen might be getting into, because their interests are really expanding. And a lot of times they're just curious about what else is in the world. And we need to allow them to do that safely. And by safely, I mean, we're still talking to them about it.
Yes. I think we have time for one more question. Laura Blessing, tips for students heading into geometry who missed the last crucial months of algebra. What can I do to help them get ready for their first day? Great question. I know that there are lots of online tools and apps that can help with that transition. In terms of, kind of sticking with the hanging on to the algebraic thinking, Dragon Box Algebra 12 plus might be a good app to kind of help them hang on to that. We also have a whole list of geometry apps and sites on Common Sense Media. So that might be a good place to check out to see which one might be a great fit for your kid. But there are tons of online tools that can help them be thinking in that geometric way to get ready.
Oh, there's another thing that parents can do, because when it gets into algebra and geometry, sometimes their kids aren't doing it the same way that we learned it. So there are a lot of sites and apps out there that you can plug your problem into. You can plug the equation in, and the website will explain the steps to get the answer. Now, that can be really great if kids are really struggling. Some of those, let's see, I know that we talked about some of those. Math Papa is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Socratic,
is that Google? Google, yep. Socratic. And then the Chegg. So there's a lot of sites, and kids know about these because they can give them the answers. But I think to some extent, if parents are supervising, those sort of, like, we call them tutoring apps, they can actually be really good for kids to really learn how to do a problem, see an example of a problem, and get a lot of tutorials and explanations on them that parents can't really provide.
Yeah. And if you're looking also just for something that they can play around with that is also creative, origami is one possible activity they can do.
You mean real origami?
Real origami,
oh, that's
right.
a great idea.
Yeah, that involves some geometry and spatial reasoning. Yeah.
Great. Well, so I really I think we're going to wrap up, huh? Parents, you've done an amazing job this year. We hope you get some rest and relaxation over the break. And if you'd like to share this session with other parents and caregivers, you can find it on Common Sense's website, as well as on our YouTube channel. And we're going to post those links. And we hope that you'll join Conversations with Common Sense again next week for a discussion with one of our favorite authors and friends of Common Sense, Julie Lythcott-Haims. She's a best-selling author and activist. She wrote a book called Real American. That's a biography that's really, really amazing, and we love her. So she's going to be here next week, and you'll definitely want to tune into that, because she's going to offer a lot of tips about talking to your kids about a lot of the issues that are going on in today's world. So definitely look into that. Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.